Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Real Israel Podcast with me, your host, Chaim Mailspin. Join us as we dive into Israel's past, present, and future as we explore the rich history, current events, and visionary perspectives shaping this dynamic region. Shalom. What an honor it is to see you. I see the Druze flag behind you. Mansour Ashkar, you do an amazing work on YouTube and Facebook, right? You're on multiple channels, TikTok, you're everywhere. And I watch your stuff. I love it. And I know you've served here you're an Israeli. I just think a lot of people don't understand who the Druze people are, what they're going through. Literally, it's like the 7th of October. People who can imagine what we went through when our brothers and sisters were massacred and dragged into tunnels of terror. And I'm a soldier. I got my shepherd staff, Psalms 23, shepherd staff, rod on thy staff, Glock 19, and with a cool scope. But I go to try to rescue them from the tunnels. I'm searching for these hostages, for almost 2 years, finding some, going through every kind of danger. And I think of the Druze people, our allies, our friends. And you and I are friends, but the Druze are friends with Israel, just like Jethro, and I've been to Nebi Shuaib right over in the Galilee. There's this place where I guess it's a memorial for Jethro. I don't know if they think Jethro was buried there, but it's a memorial for Jethro. I've been there. I've met some of the sheikhs, they're called, or the leaders. Yeah, and many people don't understand who the Druze people are. So in this, I want to hear your heart. I want to hear a little bit more about the Druze, a little bit more about the connection of the Druze in Israel, and then really about what's going on, this horrific massacre, October 7th, happening in front of our eyes, these videos of people being thrown off of roofs, almost crying, thrown off of roofs, massacred in hospital beds, just shot. I'm watching these videos. Some of our guys, Yahalom, I'm of the elite unit Yahalom, which is like SWAT, but it's Combat Engineer Corps, elite unit for special missions, like tunnels and lots of explosives and so on. So a lot of our guys are in Syria as well, and I know that there's areas where the Druze are, and there, no one's shooting at us. But the areas where the essentially ISIS, Al-Qaeda, terrorists are, there is very dangerous. I would say these guys are like just as dangerous or worse than Hamas could even be.
Well, I'll add to what you just said. The only safe place right now in Syria for minorities, that is Christians, Druze, or anyone that is, God-loving, peace-seeking, is under the Israeli occupation in the Syrian ground right now. That is a fact on the ground. I'm hearing this from many, many sources in Syria, telling me we're trying to flee there because IDF is the only one that can protect us from this government. Now, how crazy that is, that despite the concept that the Western media is trying to portray, again and again, Israel is the only one that is saving minorities in the Middle East, and the only place that is safe for Arabs and Muslims and Druze and Christians and Jews in the Middle East. Now, speaking about the Druze, our brothers in Syria right now, to those who don't know,
and just before that, a little bit, so you're a Druze, that's a Druze flag behind you. Were you born, where were you born? Maybe just a little bit about you before we go, like about your Druze heritage.
Yes, definitely. So I'm an Israeli Druze. I'm right now a host of my own podcast, the Mansour Ashkar, basically, podcast. I was born and raised in Israel, in the Carmel. That's next to Haifa. That's where Elijah kind of burned the prophets.
Gotcha.
And then ran down from the mountain. And then I was raised in a Jewish town of Eilat for the majority of my life. And that's where really I got opened to the beauty of Israel, to see, how in Israel you have so many different religions that just live simultaneously together, and people are safe to leave their doors open in their house.
People don't know that there's Bedouins in Israel, there are Druze in Israel, there are Baha'i people, there's Jews, and even in the Jewish ethnicity, well, there's Ethiopian Jews and those that come from Kaifeng that look very Asian, and Manipur, Mizoram, northern India. The Lamba tribe is being discovered in Africa near Botswana. You have the tribes returning from all over, and then from France and England and America, or Ashkenazi and more Sephardi.
Yeah,
It's just such a melting pot in many, many ways. And
it's
you're
insane.
representing the Druze people who you grew up, you said you were born here, you lived your whole life in Israel, but you're a Druze person and you're served in
Yes.
the army.
I will
Amazing.
even add my grandfather was the first non-Jew to light the Masu'ah, which is the torch, the beacon in Israel. He was elected there because he was the most high-ranking non-Jew officer in the army in his time. He fought in all of Israel war. He got the Medal of Honor, the Medal of Bravery. He was a friend of Yitzhak Rabin and many other leaders in the government, and he went to politics and he became a sheikh, a religious figure. And the Druze followed, throughout the history of Israel, the Druze have fought in all of our wars alongside with the Jews to defend their home, their country, mostly from Muslim invaders and radical Islam that want to basically submit them under Sharia law.
It's
And
true.
they stood tall with the Jews and said, we will not be, subjected to Sharia law. We will have our own country. And they created this blood covenant between the Druze and the Jews that is still strong, standing strong till today. Probably, and I don't want to disregard other covenants that we have in Israel, but it's probably the strongest covenant between different groups of people that we have in Israel.
Yeah, and I just gotta say a word about the Druze. I would say some of the bravest, most self-sacrificing fighters that they're willing to go into. I know when the Hamas, for example, first took um, hostages, some of them were Bedouins, some of them were Muslims, some of them might have been Druze. I'm not sure, but there you see this strength of saying we will join with Israel very openly. I remember seeing videos of different people in Arabic and just saying, we're going to come and rescue these hostages. Very brave. And I know
Yeah.
that's what we needed in that time, is to hear the Arabic voices of Israel speak and say, Hamas, you're wrong. They don't hear that in the West enough. And they're just so brave. I think that, I mean, they're a small community and they've lost so many
Yeah.
in wars. And it's not deterring them from their bravery, and they're being
Yeah.
valiant and
Yeah. People
courageous.
remember the story of Salman Habake. He was the tank commander, the officer. He was stationed quite far from Gaza when everything happened, and only civilians and elite special forces units were going in to defend from the Hamas invasions. There was not the IDF there. It was small teams of special forces that went with helicopters or jeeps or even jumped from their home and drove there into the pits of hell, basically, to fight alongside pregnant women and fathers that were just waking up on a Shabbat morning, on a holiday day, and they were fighting against hordes of terrorists that came. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a tank arrives. And apparently, he defied orders because they were all telling him, let's see what's happening. The army was trying to work. And he said, no, my Jewish brothers and sisters are being slaughtered. He defied orders and drove his tanks all alone there and managed to save an entire, basically, yeshuv there, because the paratroopers were there trying to fight, but they were fighting against overwhelming odds. And when a tank comes, and we know it, we've been in the army, a tank is a big multiplier of strength and also boost for morale. When you start seeing the IDF tanks and Merkava
Yeah.
suddenly coming in, these chariots coming in beside you, that just, gives you so much power to know that you have your back. And he fought there for days, defending. And then he entered Gaza and kept fighting in Gaza. And then he died in Gaza. So we have so many stories of Druze men, brave men who sacrificed their life without, even hesitating for the Jewish brother, for the sake of the state, and vice versa. So many Jews who sacrificed, so many Christians, so many even Muslims who joined that army. That's the beauty of Israel, where you see fighting for light against darkness. And, bringing it to Syria, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Right now, they don't have the IDF there. Syria, the people there, we have the IDF in Israel that contained this genocidal attempt. Hamas came and they wanted to kill everyone in Israel. They would have if they could have. Israel went and stopped them because the IDF came and stopped them, contained it. In Syria, hordes of Bedouins, about 60 tribes of Bedouins, and they also made a fatwa right now that allows, the brother-in-law of Jolani basically made that's a religious permission that says that Muslim fighters are allowed to kill the Druze and kidnap their women and daughters as sex slaves. So now you have even more jihadists from all over the Middle East flocking because they see this mountain of the Druze, which is Druze and Christians living in it, by the way, as a great target to kill, to fill their bloodthirst that they have for beheading. We're seeing burning people to the chair. We're seeing October 7 images, and then foreign fighters are coming in, all coming, and the government is actually going with them. So instead of defending people in Syria, the government is the one. So imagine the IDF would have came during October 7 and start fighting along Hamas against the people.
Oh.
That is the picture. So the Druze there are not only that they're a minority in Syria, there's about 700,000 of them in Syria and more than 500,000, let's say, give or take, hard to know the numbers in that mountain, including many Christians and other minorities that fled there, because the Druze in Syria were the only ones that said to this terrorist ISIS regime that took the country that we will not succumb and bend the knee to Sharia. We will not live under heavy Sharia law. And people need to understand, many Muslims live under Sharia law, and you have different kind of, let's say, levels of Sharia law. Syria is right now considered the Salafi, which is the most extreme. The people the Salafi followers call it, that choose to take Islam that way, they basically take Islam to the most extreme of extreme that they can. And there's a lot of place to go extreme there. And every aspect, we see that in many places. For example, in Afghanistan, the way they treat women. Every time they just make it more extreme, covering them, not allowed to go to work, girls not allowed to go to school, women are not allowed to speak, you're not allowed to see women's eye. They're not allowed, so they're not allowed to sit next to a man because you might smell them, so it goes worse and worse and worse, and that is a Salafi. There's like no limit, no boundaries in the boundaries of what they can invent. So Salafi also goes to how to treat minorities. And in the Quran, there's a call that Druze should be killed, by the way, but Jews and Christians are not allowed to hold weapons, not allowed to build new churches, not allowed to ride horses. And when Jolani Ahmed al-Shara, the terrorist from ISIS and Al-Qaeda that took this country by force, when he started the country, he basically started implementing this extreme Sunni Sharia law. And one of the first things that he said is we need to disarm everyone that is not Muslim. Meanwhile, arming all these radical jihadist Al-Qaeda terrorists, giving them better loot because now they're the government, It's like nepotism, epic terrorist jihadist scale. They're like, now, okay, let's give you new jeeps, new machine guns.
Is this called dhimmi?
Yes.
Dhimmitude. So it means like you're a second-class citizen. The actual definition of apartheid is having, like how it was, they had the black people weren't allowed to come to, because this is for whites only, that whole thing. That is exactly that. I wonder if the West knows that this is
exactly that, exactly. And once people understand that, they start getting a better picture of what is Syria have become. Syria have become a Salafi, extremist Muslim nation that is run by a warlord that is backed by tribes of, we've seen all these tribes fighting, by the way, of jihadist ISIS. If you look at the images, you see that many of the fighters that came to slaughter the Druze and the Christians in the mountain have ISIS patch, Al-Qaeda patch, and they're with the soldiers. Now, here's an interesting story. The first day of the war, they ascended to the Druze mountain to massacre the Druze and the Christians in the mountain. Israel told Jolani, not going to happen. Jolani told them, watch me. Israel told them, we're not going to let you massacre these innocent people. He sent his army with tanks, artillery, with the Bedouin tribes and etc., just driving like, some kind of a Mad Max of the jihadist world, all these pickup trucks. Israel start picking targets. Israel start shooting their tanks, start shooting their jeeps, and then they cried and said, ceasefire, ceasefire. And the army started running back. That ceasefire was a hudna. A hudna, there's no ceasefire in the Muslim world. A hudna is like, let us stop fighting you so we can kill you tomorrow. And they did it exactly that. The morning after, they broke the ceasefire at 4 in the morning and went and started slaughtering people in the villages. Israel then told Jolani, stop. He says, I can. They shot a missile into the Ministry of Defense building, which is basically the Pentagon of Syria.
Yeah.
Jolani the coward got scared because there were talks in the Israeli government. There were there was ministers that were saying, let's take him out. He's a terrorist. I know America is trying to give him some kind of a PR thing, but we know what's happening here. He is an ISIS terrorist. He's been kidnapping Christians for so long. He's been raping. He's been beheading. He's like, I try to explain to people, try to imagine right now the worst human being that you have in your co-space. You're living in America, you're living in Europe, and you have someone that is just really annoying, just a really bad person. We all have that person in our life that we think like, man, just every time I think he can go worse, he goes worse. Now, try to understand that he is better than any ISIS person you've ever met in your life. He's a saint compared to ISIS people. ISIS people, they kill, they behead, they torture, they take joy in that, they rape, they kidnap. There's like horrific stories of things that ISIS have done through the past. Now, Jolani is not just a normal ISIS. He was an ISIS in its prime, and then he became a general in ISIS, and then in Al-Qaeda. So to understand like what kind of evil we're dealing
Top
with
of the
here,
ISIS.
yeah, it's hard to people to understand because if you will meet someone that evil in your country, you'll have a very brief window to meet him because usually they'll get arrested because they'll end up as serial killers or a rapist or molesters, and they get arrested. So you don't intend to meet them that often. You'll meet them in extreme prisons when you go because these people are really, really evil. So people don't understand, and he's not a one-off. There's just plenty of them in Syria. Plenty. We've seen these videos.
Yeah, I did a video not that long ago about Jolani, just telling people like the name Osama bin Laden. You remember what he did to the Twin Towers. You know how he had Zarqawi, who took over after he was taken out, and then Bush took him out, eliminated him. Then you have Zarqawi, and he was hiding, wasn't a strong enough leader. So you have not Zarqawi, you have Zawahiri, sorry, took over, and then you have him eventually taken out too, and Zarqawi comes up and starts the Islamic State of Iraq. And you have al-Baghdadi and all this, and you have Trump coming in on his first term, removing this ISIS threat. But what happens is you have Jolani, which actually is a nickname. It's like Golani, Golan Heights of Israel, where Trump Heights are. People don't get what they're saying when they're trying to be friends with this guy. So he was the one to put the S. He was set out to put the S in ISIS. It was just Islamic State of Iraq, ISIS. No S. And he's like, and Syria. So he went to Syria, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and he goes and butchers his way through. And because he was able to displace Assad, and he became but then of course he says, I disassociate myself with Al-Qaeda. I disassociate myself with. But
he started his own branch.
Jabhat al-Nusra and Jabhat, it's the
He basically
same.
started his own ISIS that is focused first on Syria and then the world. He says, listen, guys, you're dealing with too many stuff, collecting too many enemies. Let me finish, cleansing Syria and making it a radical Muslim, ummah, and then we'll go on the rest. So that is the guy. That is the guy.
Is it 1,100 people that were killed, or 1,000? Already, just at the time of this filming, I heard reports of almost 1,500 massacred. That's more than October 7th.
Yeah, it's going to get more. It's going to get more. And the thing is, here's what people understand. First of all, the Druze community is smaller than the Jewish community. There's about 1.5 million Druze all around the world. So these numbers and percentages are just huge for the Jewish community. It's a very, very tiny, peaceful minority. Second of all, it's very hard to get the numbers yet because they're still killing and slaughtering in the streets. They're still burning people alive. They're still torturing. They're still kidnapping. We're seeing videos of actually them flocking back now with cars full of loot, of jewelry, of tractors, of ducks that they got from farm animals. And they just came all together to kill as much as they can and then go back with loot to their tribes, including babies. We've seen a video of some jihadists with a baby. It reminded me of the B-bus. You see a baby in a car and a bunch of jihadists making selfies with him, and women and daughters and children. There was a very sad, heartbreaking. You see some jihadis on a motorcycle with a violin that they just finished killing a Druze teenager that was 14 years old. That was known to be, a famous violinist in the region, and they killed her and took her violin. And that is what's happening now. Back to Jolani. After Israel did that attack, Jolani, and you're going to get a really interesting scoop here. That's the first time that I'm sharing this. And, it's going to be very concerning, especially for the Christian Americans to hear what I'm about to say. So after Jolani fled to Turkey because he was afraid that Israel is going to take him out, then suddenly came big pressure for ceasefire. That got broken immediately right after. But Israel stopped defending the Druze.
Right.
And for 48 hours, all the Druze and the Christians in the mountain were lifting their eyes to the sky and saying, like, what's happening? Why is no one helping us? And the jihadists started swarming, especially after that fatwa that you can kidnap their daughters and the children. More foreign fighters coming in, and the Druze were just alone there, fighting alongside with the Christians, alone against unimaginable odds. and they were just they didn't have water to drink anymore. They didn't have food. They didn't have medication. Their hospitals were slaughtered with everyone inside. And Israel, we all know, Israel have air superiority, and Israel said we're going to defend our Druze brothers and sisters. So why did they stop? They can go and drop at least medications, radio, communications, first aid, anything, basic stuff. And they just completely stopped. And people start asking, what is happening? Why is Israel? Because Israel never shied from taking down these jihadists and sending them to hell. Israel is very good at that. Israel never shied from backing up the Druze and their allies. And now they're like completely stuck there and they can't do. And rumors start to spread that America was pushing Israel and telling them, stop, don't get involved anymore. And later on, it came to light. And again, I'm hearing that from many sources in Syria and outside of Syria, from the United States, that basically Saudi Arabia and some other Arab countries have pressured the Trump administration to not let Israel save the Druze, because if Israel saved the Druze while the Jolani soldiers are actually trying to slaughter them, it will make El-Shara Jolani look really, really bad, that he lost control of his country and that it's a terrorist country and that he's killing minorities, Christians and Druze. So what they're doing, they were trying to get Jolani. So basically America start running a PR agency for an ISIS terrorist to help him. So they told him, start sending Red Cross trucks and go and save the Druze. And meanwhile, Israel, don't get involved because that's going to make him look bad. We want to make him look good, but leave these tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Bedouins, ISIS clans and foreign fighters to keep slaughtering the Druze until Jolani comes and rescue them. And that never happened. So it seems like the Christians and the Druze in that mountain were sold for a PR stunt that was kind of enforced on the West to tell Israel, stop saving them. And that is crazy. When you think about it, that is crazy.
That is optics over human life, trying to push some optics, it's called, like to make someone look good over actual human life, a massacre happening. When people read my shirt, on the Aliyah Returns, we sell these shirts, Zionist, you're a Zionist, I'm a Zionist. But there's people who think, mistakenly, that we are, all those things that you just described that they are doing, that these terrorists are doing, they're saying Zionist means that. Well, no, that's the opposite. That's called projecting. There's these issues that the West has, projecting what the enemy is doing onto, that's what they're doing, is massacring. And so we're trying to defend the Israel Defense Force, even if we did an attack on the presidential palace, that is to save so many lives. And I want to ask you personally, people in the West also don't understand big families, hamulot, that are beyond borders, like in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Syria, in Israel, and I don't know where else. Druze in America, other countries even, Druze exist. Now, do you have family that you know of in the extended family, involved in this?
Yes, I do. So I came to find that I have family in Syria quite a while back when I was still in the army in the special forces, and I told my mom to stop talking to them because I would put them in harm's way. Because I was an officer in an elite unit and they're under the Assad regime, and we stopped communication. After a while, when I left the army and I went doing all kind of different stuff, working abroad, my mom resumed communication with them, and one day she called me and she said that the Assad regime, al-Nusra and ISIS and Al-Qaeda all want to kill the Druze basically, and you need to help your family there. So they're like, my grandfather had two brothers, and they, when all the Muslim world came to destroy Israel, when Israel was created as a nation, there was a memo running around the Arab world in the Middle East: leave your homes for 2 weeks, let us come, wipe them all, genocide all the Jews from the sea. Exactly. And then you can come and take their lands and houses, their children, whatever you want. The Druze came and said, no. My grandfather had two brothers. They were already married with children. He was single still. His name was Mansour. I was named after him. And they told him, listen, brother, we heard the memo that is going on in the Arab world, and maybe it's a good idea to go back to our mountain. This mountain, by the way, Sweda, that's where they came from. Yeah. Go back there to our home and wait this war off, because you don't want to be stuck here in this, it's going to be a terrible war. They're coming to exterminate them. My grandfather told him, listen, I know you have wife and kids and you're responsible. I'm not going to hold it against you, but I'm staying here to fight with the Jews. And many Druze did that. And they had the same starting point like the Palestinians. They could have came and said, you're occupiers, you're this. But you see, the Druze don't have any Nakba. Druze don't make up any excuse. The Druze literally chose to stay beside and fight. Now, our family got separated in Syria, and now during one of them, actually, I helped rescue actually from Syria quite a while back and reached Europe, and he's living safely in Europe, fully integrated, respect the culture, speaks the language, doesn't want to enforce Sharia law on the people here. The Druze don't even believe in that. But anyway, I came to find out that now I have family after the Assad regime fell in Syria, and during this war right now, there's two aunties there, age of my mom, that are hiding in their house while these Bedouins jihadists are walking outside and trying to break in and just kill everyone. There's a few relatives, one of them died already in the fighting, another got shot in the leg, another one is trying to defend his family and flee, from the war zone with his mother and his elderly, father, and a few others. I'm also talking to several of the fighters of the Druze men that are trying to defend their land there, and I've been getting audio messages from them back and forth because they don't have internet almost, and they're sending me audio messages, and I want to compile it actually and make some kind of a Druze diary of what's happening there and put his audio and with a fake name, but just to hear. But he shared with me a crazy story about his Christian friend, and then he told me you can hear his story as well, and I heard both versions. As people know, there were a complete family of a pastor that got wiped out and murdered there. There were Christians in that mountain that sent a pledge to the world, help save us. There's a church that got burned on the way. There's another church, a little bit back that got exploded with a suicide bombing.
No UN outcry. Nobody in the world saying, stop the genocide of the Druze. All eyes on Sueda. All eyes on the Druze. No, nothing. It's silent, so silent that, it drives me crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're kidnapping Yazidis, they're murdering Christians, they're murdering Druze, no one cares. So when these jihadists broke into the town of El Sueda, they captured one house of a Christian family. And then they started making their base, and they kept the husband, the wife, and a daughter there, a teenage kid or a little bit younger. And they were going out doing raids, coming back, meanwhile torturing this family, playing with them. And at one course, they came, told the husband, the father, so you're Christian? And he said, yes. He said, so build us a cross here. And then they called the girl and said, you're Christian? She said, yes. Do you want us to see how we're going to crucify your father with nails? Imagine you're a daughter and you're seeing your father being humiliated like that, and they want to crucify him in front of you. And then they came and they wanted to take her phone as they were like playing and mocking with this little girl, and she was like crying, and she's a little girl. She said, please don't, if you can leave me this phone. She doesn't really understand the situation. And then the mother stepped in and says, please, I will give you my phone. Please don't hurt my daughter. And then they looked at the mother and says, like, you're afraid that we're going to take your daughter's phone? We're going to take your daughter. And then they were dragging the daughter away. The mother went on her knees and started praying to Jesus. And her husband, he's a Christian, but he's not, a devoted following Christians. It's just, he's like the day-by-day kind of. He came in and told his wife, please don't pray right now, because they're going to hear it and it's going to make it worse. That's not a good time to pray. And she turned to him and she said, this is the best time to pray. And she started praying out loud. And in that moment, the Israeli fighter jets went over the sky, dropped a rocket there, a missile, blew up some of these jihadists. The other one got panicked, started running away. The family gathered themselves and fled. So they're saying that God have sent the Israeli Air Force to go and save them right in that moment of prayer. Wow. And then my friends, the Druze that are fighting there, went and back to them and saved them and took them, and now they're together. Fighting side by side, by the way, to keep freeing that mountain from these jihadists. So we're hearing so many crazy stories like that of how it's insane. It's insane what's going on there.
Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Real Israel podcast with me, Chaim Mailspin, where truth shines, dispelling the darkness. And if you found value in today's episode, please like it, comment, we want to hear from you, and subscribe. Click that notification bell and share it. Join the conversation and be a truth speaker